Hello and welcome back. I am Jon Najarian and this is 3 at 3. 3 at 3, we bring you unusual option activity. This episode is for the 19th of January, 2022. Unusual option activity, calls that were bought on the offer in large numbers. We do have that in spades today. Puts that were bought, yes, we do have that as well. We look for both calls or puts being bought in large numbers, and then we just coattail along with whoever that very big buyer was. Frequently, in fact, usually, we don't know who that buyer is. But the size tells us that somebody has a commitment and perhaps better knowledge about what's about to happen to that stock, and that's why we follow unusual option activity. Whoops. There we go. Accidentally slipped off the screen there, folks. Sorry about that. So with that said, let's get to an update on one we gave you yesterday, which was Kohl's, KSS. You see that on the top of your screen. KSS stock was 51 bucks. They bought 6,300 of the March 5250 calls. So you see at the bottom of the screen by that big, beautiful yellow arrow, the stock peaked today at 53.61. So it opened down 60 cents today and then turned around and just ran to the upside. And by the first hour or so of trading, it peaked at 53.61. So if you're a stock trader, you made $2 and call it 60 cents. And if you're an option trader and you bought at the money options, you did even better. Just wanted to point out that one because that's just a one-day trade. Let's start with today's first of 3 at 3, which is Western Union, WU, bearish put buying. Notice that's red. Puts, we try to express them in red, calls in green. So bearish put buying, right at the money. The stock was trading 1885, let's call it 19 bucks. They're buying 5,600 of the February 19 puts. So as they buy those puts, we could get in there and buy the same put. If the stock starts slipping, we could sell a put underneath it. So when we talk about calls, we're talking about buying it at the money, selling above. When I'm doing puts, I own the put and I can sell a lower strike, any of these lower strikes against it. Cuts my time decay. It also cuts down the capital I have invested in the trade, makes it very nice. And Western Union, not that I'm rooting against them, but somebody is, to the tune of about 560,000 shares on the short side. Bang. Let's get to the second of today's 3 at 3, which is going to be BioCryst. Now, in this case, they buy an in-the-money option. You see the stock. February, basically, of last year, the stock was $9. Ran all the way up into the teens to 18, pulled back all the way to about 12 or 11 change maybe. And at 14.88, they start coming in again to buy calls. This time they're buying in the money calls. So instead of spending $14.88 for those calls, they bought for the stock. Instead of spending $14.88 for the stock, they stepped in and bought in the money calls that are in the money by about $1.75 because the stock was $14.75. The right to buy that stock at 13 when it's trading $14.75 is $1.75. So they stepped in there, bought those calls. Now, that may be too rich for some of your blood that like to follow and cut your risks as much as possible. So you could buy the 14 calls, you could buy the 15 calls, either of those, and then start selling upside calls against it if the stock gives you a rally. You know my discipline is if I lose half of the option trade, not stock, half of the option trade, I cut my losses. If, on the other hand, I make 100% on my stock trade, or rather on my option trade, then I take that half off and I let the other half run with a stop snugged up underneath it. Third trade today, and this is a biggie, Cameco. A lot of you guys on Twitter have responded to me, thank you, about that. The stock is a uranium play, one of the biggest uranium plays. And so CCJ, Cameco, was up almost 3% today, 22.18 when I was on the show. They were buying the 24 strike calls. Again, $2 out of the money. I would elect instead to buy at the money calls, not those out of the money calls. Stock was 21.86 when we saw it. It moved up by, call it 30 cents when we mentioned it on the halftime report. They bought, folks, the 20, which one was that? Shoot. They bought the 22 calls, and then they stepped up later and bought the 26 calls. So the one that I highlighted here was the 26 calls that was the most recent. But let me just see here. I know they also bought the lower strike call. I'm just going to pull that up, guys. Sorry about that. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see, CCJ, because that one was the one that was 23,000 March 24s. But they were all over several different strikes today on this one. And we want to follow along with that smart money. They're buying the 24s. Well, we could buy the 22s and sell 24s against it. When they step up again and buy the 26 calls, further endorsement of the trade, not quite as large, but nonetheless, 4,800's 480,000 share equivalent. The 23,000 March 24s that they bought, those were obviously 2.3 million share equivalent. Now, I also want to point out that March is 2 full expiration cycles into the future, 2 months, and June's would be 5 months into the future. So when you're following this kind of activity and it's out that far into the future, you have time. You don't need to be as desperate to sell upside calls against your position, as you must be very aware. The final 60 days of the options life, the acceleration of time decay can be extreme. The final 30 days, very, very extreme. And then, of course, weeklies even more so. So the closer we get to expiration, the more, when we see unusual activity, I have to do something against it because the time decay is just too fierce. Now, both of these, the March 24s and these June 26 calls, are out there pretty far into the future, so I can afford to let them ride for a while. Time decay is negligible on something that's this far out into the future. So again, that's our 3 trades today: Western Union, BioCryst, and Cameco. If you would like to learn more about trading stock, options, futures, cryptocurrencies, encourage you to go over to marketrebellion.com/get started. You can learn all about how we do it, how most professional traders would do it. We have tutorials online, we have coaches, we have mentors. So you can decide what level of support you'd want, much like when you're a skier like me. And if you care to get a professional in a group setting, that's one price. If you'd like to get a private lesson, it's another price. Semi-private lesson, different price again. So you get to decide what the appropriate amount of spending on your education is, and then you can follow right along. We have online tutorials, we have online webinars. You get all of it. marketrebellion.com/get started. With that said, I'm going to close it up today. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I'll see you tomorrow from Puerto Rico.